Well, good morning and welcome to Zen Live, or as I like to call it, Zen Fits. So, last night at Martini time, I was talking about, I really got interested in this forgiveness and what's behind the screen here. Why is it a religious commandment to forgive the person who hurts you? It all kind of like starts with Jesus on the Christ, to forgive them because they don't know what they're doing. So it seems to be a commandment of Jesus to forgive. Yet, I don't feel like it. So let's look into this and continue it from last night. And the other day, if you've been hanging in here with me, is that we were looking at the gestalt picture of the old lady and the old hag, the old woman and the young woman, and how you can't visually, if you stare at the old woman, the young woman will appear, and if you stare at the young woman, the old woman will appear. Maybe 3 seconds. For me, when I look at it, every 3 seconds it flips. So this inability to choose one or the other is kind of like what we want to talk about here. It's called a double bind, where you have to choose, but you can't. You have to choose one, but they are opposite and they're mutually dependent. So if you choose you have to choose one, the old woman or the young woman, but if you choose one, the other one knocks you off your seat. So you can't just choose one and be done with it. So this idea of I can't choose then, I can't choose. So we'll pick this up with forgiveness and say I can't choose forgiveness. Isn't that the problem? So what is the wound we're talking about? Well, a wound is a feeling, a hurt, a pain, when the world disappoints you. The world doesn't live up to your expectations. And by the world, I'm not talking about some abstract idea of the world. I'm talking about the world personified in another person. So when another person, whether it's a stranger or a friend, and the bigger wounds are with friends or people we really trust, you see. So those are big wounds rather than a wound a passing stranger might give you. But the idea is that the world personifies for each of us in other people. So if you're married, your wife or your husband is the world personified just for you in a personal relationship. So if the other person then wounds you by not living up to your expectation of them, you see, that's kind of like a broken trust, you know. I used to do weddings, and I always was interested in the cake cutting or the cake feeding as the first, and I would tell them, you know, this is your first crisis of trust, you know. This is your first act of your marriage, basically. Everything else is scripted, pretty much. When the minister says, "Do you take this man or woman?" Very rarely does a person say, "I don't." That would be a huge violation of expectation. But when the cake cutting comes, so here they are. And maybe before they all talk about it, no, I'm not going to smash. No, we're not going to smash. I promise I don't smash you. I don't smash, you know, we're not going to smash. Okay. Ta-da! And one of them goes, boom, like that. And then the other one is lost. All their friends are standing around, particularly men. And usually this happens with the woman break, you know, like that. And now the guy's got to do catch up. You know, he's got to hit her pit back, you see, because everybody's looking at him. The only time, I've done weddings since 1987, and the only time there was a creative response to this problem. Now the problem here is there's tension, and there's the cake. The cake thing, I don't know why I got on this, but it's a great metaphor. The cake cutting is basically a metaphor. The cake is a metaphor for the world. It's, and the unity of the three layers, boom, 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 and the bride and groom on the top, you see. It's a unit, it's a symbol of the unity of the marriage. Now they're going to each share their world with the other. You see, that's the whole idea behind the feeding of the cake. I'm feeding you myself. I am the cake. This is my body. And the champagne, this is my blood. And now we're going to have communion. And I'm going to feed you my body. I'm going to feed you my flesh and my blood. I'm going to feed you myself. And I'm going to feed you myself. So they do it either one separately, I feed you, you feed me, or they do it at the same time. You see, this is a Eucharist. This is the only Eucharist in which everyone participates in, whether you have religion or not. You ever think of that? This is a Eucharist. This is the feeding of myself. When Jesus says, this piece of bread and this wine, this is my body, this is my blood, he's giving you himself, you see. So the Eucharist and the Mass is a reenactment of this feeding. And so the wedding is a Eucharist, a secular Eucharist, you see. So what happens then is that convention and pressure, has turned it into a food fight. And it's fun. But I've seen some wounds happen here. You said you weren't going to hit, you said you weren't going to smash me. I lied. The script for the wedding, you see, the script for the marriage, you see. So anyway, the wound happens when an expectation or a promise or a trust is broken. Okay, so now you got a wound. And it hurts. Okay. So forgiveness, basically, is not about relieving the other person of their pain. It's about relieving you of your pain. They may not have any pain. You're the one that's got the burning. You're the one that's got the hurt. It's the Hurt Locker, the movie Hurt Locker. It's the Hurt Locker. Or if you remember the campaign by Al Gore when they were talking about Social Security, it's in a lockbox. Well, the hurt is in a lockbox and you don't know where the key is. So then the imperative or the commandment is, well, forgive the other and you'll get rid of the hurt. But it doesn't work. And now let's look at why it doesn't work. So you got your double bind here. Remember the choice of two opposites. So you can't choose one or the other. So one imperative is that I should forgive. Okay? If I'm going to be good or a good Christian or whatever I'm going to be, I should forgive the other person. Jesus did it. But the other side here, this is mind, thought, I should forgive, I think. I tell myself. But feeling over here, which is the body, but says, but I hurt. So you can't choose the young woman without the old woman being there. I hurt is the old woman. I should forgive is the young woman. Okay? Back and forth. You can't choose, let's put it this way. You can't choose to forgive. You can't choose to love. You can't choose to be spontaneous. You see, but the commandment says you should. And this is what creates a double bind. So you should try. If you can't do it, you should try. Try to forgive. We'll see how that works out. You end up by just wounding yourself more. If you try to forgive, either you pretend you forgive and now you're a hypocrite, and that's a wound, or you repress the pain. Oh, I don't really hurt, I press it, I'll just push it down. And so you're sitting on this volcano, and then one day something triggers it and pew, it's all over the place, you see. So these trying doesn't work. And when you have a double bind, it's got to, and I've talked about this before, when you have a double bind of lose-lose, double bind is lose-lose. No matter what you do, you're damned. No matter what you do, you lose, you see. When you're in that situation, it can only go in two ways. And it's got to go somewhere. You can't sit on it. You can't sustain that. Because it's a division in yourself. You see, when you are divided between your thinking, or yourself, your me, and your feelings, when they're not compatible, when they're in conflict, that basically is what back in the Old Testament, the prophets were talking about, the hypocrites. A hypocrite is a person who says one thing and does another, or who thinks one thing and feels another. That is a wound. That's a division. That is a division in your body-mind. You see, unity, the unified individual, the individuation, the authentic individual is a unity of body and mind. They're one. But when there is a wound, they are two. See? So this wound, everybody's got this wound. I mean, this is not some common thing. Everybody's wounded because our whole culture basically divides body from mind. So we're all looking for some kind of healing, whether it's in a new cosmetic or a car or a new relationship or something. Everybody's trying to get healed from this wound that won't heal. And it won't heal because we don't know where the key is. The wound's in a lockbox, you see. So there is, this is a failure in communication. Now, the body and mind can't communicate. We all see this every day. You lose your car keys. Okay? It's in the house. And you go looking for your car keys. You're under the book. You start looking in the same place twice. Is it under here? Maybe I missed it the first time. And you got to go somewhere, so the panic increases. But where are the car keys? Says the mind. Well, then you relax. Oh, my mother did this. Well, then I quit. I give up. And the next thing you know, you have discovered the car keys. Usually by stumble upon it, or maybe you just go somewhere that you assumed it wasn't. Oh, that's it. You go, when we look for the car keys, we're only looking where we assume they are. So when we find the car keys, it's when we no longer assume they are any place. My mother's, and I've told this story before, but it's such a great story. She lost her car keys, and she was 100 years old. She was still driving. And so she was just going in circles for days. And she said, I'm going to have a stroke if I don't find them. So then the next time I saw her, she was really happy and smiling. And what happened, Mom? And she said, well, I just gave it up to God. I just surrendered the whole thing. I quit. And immediately she walked into her body, walked into the closet and put her hand in her sweater pocket, and there were the car keys. Her mind had no idea what her body was doing. It was like her body just walked into the closet, and there it was. So her body wisdom knew where it was all the time, but it couldn't tell the mind because the mind wouldn't shut up. The mind was running around. It's got to be here, I can't find it, oh my God. Panic, 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 you see. So as soon as she relaxed the panic, the body went right to the keys. They communicated. It's like a horse going to the water when you're looking for the water in the wrong place. And then when you drop the reins, the horse goes to the water. Or your dog. If you listen to the dog will tell you what it needs. The dog will communicate through the body. But the dog can't communicate to you through language, through the mind, you see. So language is in the mind, and the body is in action, feelings. So you see the problem with the wound here is that the mind, with its language and its thinking, cannot communicate with the body, which feels the hurt. So the hurt's in the body. The hurt is in the feeling. It's not in the mind. You see? So you can't. So there's a failure in communication between feeling and thinking. And the failure is that we blamed the feeling pain on something external, like he or she did it to me. But the thing, the cause, which we think is external, the other person, the wound, when we got shot with the arrow, is in the past. But the hurt is now. So now we have a time and now. So the problem now is that the pain is in the past or time, but I mean the hurt is in now, but the cause of it is in the time, and that's a different. Than the past, you can't go into the past and redo it, even though we keep thinking, well, if he had done this or done that, well, you know, that's just fantasy. I mean, that's just foolishness, because you can't go back and redo it. It's just going in a tape loop, trying to get out of the hurt by thinking about it, you see. So when we've got a hurt, we've got a wound, the mind goes in a tape loop, okay? When we have a wound, a hurt that we can't forgive, the mind, the thinking starts going in a tape loop. The symbol of that is the dragon or snake eating itself, or the dog chasing its tail, or the cat chasing its tail. So this starts going, and it's called a vicious cycle. And this is thought trying to eat the hurt in the body, but it can't do it because it's left in thought, and there's no communication here. So what we're really interested in is trying to find a bridge to communicate between mind and body. So there has to be, like my mother, when she lost her car keys, she surrendered thinking and the tape loop of the search for healing. See, when we lose our car keys, that's painful, and we'll be healed when we find the car keys. Finding the car keys will remove the pain of losing the car keys. So, the path to forgiveness has to be through a surrender of the tape loop of thinking to the body. So we have to bow to the body. We have to bow to the feeling. So how do we do that? Well, it's like we have to go into the instant. See, when we're wounded, there's the hurt, and we don't like that hurt, so we want to get rid of it. I want to get away from this thing, but I can't. It follows me like a tin can tied to a cat. You see? So the faster I run, the louder the tin can gets, you see. So I can't get away from it because it's me. The body is me. Not feeling me. The body is real. I mean, unless you don't feel something, it's not really real for you. You have to feel it. Feeling is now. Feeling is this. Feeling is who I am. Feeling is life. I'm alive because I feel. You see. So, I'm not. So if we want to get rid of the hurt locker, we have to discover a way to enter into the body where the pain is. We have to go where the pain is. We have to go where the fire is. If you're going to put out a fire, you don't put it out in the house next door to the one that's burning. You go into the burning house. So the hurt is a fire. So we have to go into the fire. Now how do we do that? So, okay. So you want to, now this is, I talked about this last night, but this is a practice that you have to experiment with and play with to see if it works. Everybody's got a wound somewhere, so there's plenty of things to work with. So find the worst one and sit down and just evoke it. Just remember the situation and the pain, and you invite it. Okay? Open the door. Well, come on in. Come on in, memory of the situation, and bring the pain with you. So it comes in and here. So you just try to let me feel this thing. So you just sit down and you just feel, now I'm really going to just let the pain be here. I'm just going to let this little campfire burn here, and I'm not going to pay attention to who caused it. I'm just going to leave the cause, the person who hurt me, at the door. You don't come in. All I want to come into the mind is the feeling. Just the feeling. Just the pain, the feeling of it. You have to, not the memory of it, not the thought of it, but the actual feeling, the actual burning, the actual pain. And it's just a feeling. You're sitting in a room, there's nobody there. So it's not like you're recreating. It feels like you're recreating the actual wound, but you're not. You're just calling up a feeling that was attached to the memory in time, you see. So the whole idea here is to separate, a surgical separation of the feeling from its attachment to the story, you see. So here's the story back here. And the story is victim. See, the story of pain is that I'm a victim of this person. This person hurt me. I'm a victim. The world hurt me. The boss hurt me. Somebody hurt me. I'm a victim. So that's the story. So you want to leave that at the door. So this is a meditation, basically. You're meditating on your pain. You just want to let the pain be there without the story. And you'll notice that it's the story that holds the pain in place as me. If you cut away the story, there's just a feeling, and you don't resist it, you're welcoming it. Come on in. You welcome the pain, you invite the pain, which means accepting. Okay? So when you accept the pain, that eliminates, there's no more resistance to it, and there's no more when you're not resisting the pain, there is no more separation of your mind and your body. There's no more separation of you, your feeling of you, your sense of you, from the feeling, and that is the original cause of the pain. This is what Buddha said in the Four Noble Truths. The one is, there is suffering, you got this hurt. Number two, there's a cause to it. And the cause is not the other person. The cause is you're split in yourself from yourself. You have divided yourself into two incompatible, incommunicable halves. But you have to be one. When we're one, we're healed. When we're one, we're authentic. When we're one, we're happy with the world and ourselves. When we're divided, we're wounded. And the wound in the division is impossible because we have to be one. But we feel split, you see. That's the wound. And in Christianity, it's the sword and wound in the side of Christ. It's the cross. So how do we get off the cross to the resurrection? Well, we have to go to the cross willingly, which is what Christ did. He accepted the cross. So you accept the pain. That's your cross. You accept that hurt by not connecting the feeling of pain to the cause of the pain, is who did it. So when you just sit with the pain, it dissipates because there's nothing to hold it. As long as it was attached to a story and your victimization and all that stuff, that holds the pain. So whenever you're reminded of the person, the pain comes back. And that's why this pain wound will go into more division and more anger. Because it's got to go, you can't live with this, it's got to go either towards healing and unity, which you can call forgiveness, or it goes to division and anger. And all the news is full of this. When it goes to anger, it will keep on going until one of them shoots the other person to get out of it. Because shooting the other person and going to prison for life is better than living with it. You see, at least I got rid of it. But now they got more pain. So it either goes to this violent explosion or it goes to healing and unity. And this is always going to be creative. This path is going to be creative, and this path is going to be reactive. So this is a response, and this is a reaction. And when we go in the response, which is a creative response, what I just described is a creative response. You do the madness, you do the crazy thing. You invite the pain in, you accept it. That's nuts. Why do I want to invite in the pain that I'm trying to get rid of? You see? That's the mad leap in Avatar. So Jake Sully, he's caught in the double bind between the Navi and the Sky People. So he does a mad act. He leaps on the last shadow. And he describes it as some insane act. So this is an insane act. It's not rational to accept the pain you're trying to get rid of. You see? This is a crazy thing to do. It's not logical. It's not what we're taught. We're taught to get rid of the cause, fix the person who did the pain to you. Get rid of them or make them be sorry or do something to them, you see. Hurt them. Give them as much pain as they gave you. Eye for an eye, you see. So this is a radical solution. But you can't believe it. You have to do it. It's not a matter of saying, well, that's really interesting, and I'll write a notebook on that. You know, you have to do it. So, thank you for dropping in on this Saturday morning, and try this out. And I keep talking about the same thing over and over again because I don't know who's dropping in. Maybe you've been here all these and you say, oh, you said that before. Or maybe you're just dropping in and what is he, wow, I've never heard that before, you see. So this is a practice. It doesn't happen, you don't snap your fingers and do it overnight, you practice. And when you imbibe this, when you imbibe this practice, when you abide in this practice, it becomes automatic. When somebody doesn't meet your expectations, there's a little, and immediately you can let it go. It's like water off a duck's back. It's like Teflon instead of Velcro. You don't hold the pain anymore. You don't hold the wounds, the disappointments. And the world is full of them. Just when suddenly you get everything fixed and the washing machine breaks down. You see. So we get to a place where everything is just this. It's not like, oh my God, I'm a victim. pain, hurt. Why did that happen to me? Why me? It should not have happened. It should, well, everything just happens. It shouldn't, there is no, it should be this way or that way. Nothing should be this way or that way. Everything is what is. And everything happens because it can't happen in a different way. I can imagine it can happen in a different way, but it still happens the way it happens. And it must happen the way it happens. It can't happen a different way. Only in the rearview mirror can we say this should have happened a different way. But life is not driving in a rearview mirror. Life is, while you're driving and looking in the rearview mirror, you're still driving in the present moment. You're still happening as you happen now, but you're looking at the past and saying it should have happened differently. Well, that's an illusion. You see, everything is happening as it happens, and it can't happen any differently. So you work with what's given. You're always working with just this. And you work with just this without the baggage of it should be different. As soon as you carry the backpack, these weights full of rocks, it should be different than it is. You're just going to get old and bent over, and you're just going to be a creaky, cranky old person saying it should have been, life should have been different than this, you see. Well, you know, so we live in a culture where everything should be different than it is. So we live in that, to make the crazy leap and say the pain should, you know, I accept the pain because it can't be any other than it is right now. So I just welcome it and I'll look at it. I'm curious about what is this little bonfire of hurt in me. What is it? I just want to roast a marshmallow on it. I just want to cook some hot dogs on it. You see. So this is a funeral pyre. So it's through the funeral pyre that you are liberated. Ironically, I mean not ironically, but this is in Zoroastrianism in Persia, their primary symbol of their religion is the firebird, the phoenix bird that rises up out of its own ashes, the firebird. So be a firebird and go into the fire that's burning you. And your ashes will turn into liberation. And you'll fly out, liberated from the pain of the fire, through the fire. And I shall see you this evening. Thank you.